Hey, what's happening, YouTube friends and family? It's evening time. I'm back at the hotel. Um, I'm actually enjoying a cold one. And no, this is not product placement. This is me actually enjoying a cold one. Um, the the job on truck 742 is done. The EGR um, gasket leak that we had. It was a correct diagnosis. You'll see in the video it was torn. It was missing a big old chunk out of it. Got it done without any collateral damage, nothing else. Didn't have to spend money on anything that wasn't part of the job itself, and that was a result of just giving it the time it needed. When I said it was a big job, it wasn't a big job in terms of it was a lot of work to do and we had to pull ahead, or it wasn't big that way. The job was big in the sense that it took a lot of time, took a lot of effort, took a lot of patience. Sadly, it's just 4 bolts and a simple little gasket about the size of your hand. But because of where it's located on the exhaust manifold, there's a lot of jobs that can be done, guys, that are simple. On these particular motors, honestly, a water pump is a very, very easy thing. It's 4 bolts. The pump comes out. You don't have to pull the fan off on these things because it's offset. The water pump on these are belt driven. On some engines, they're gear driven, and thus it's a bigger problem. And the hub of the pump is actually what supports the fan. These particular motors are built a little bit different. They have the gear set, the timing gear set on the rear of the engine, and so everything on the front of the engine actually is belt driven, and the water pump sits off to one side. And so don't intimidate easy to take on some jobs. Maybe ask for some advice. Get yourself a mechanic that truly has your better interest at heart. I have some good friends that are mechanics that have known me for years, and I trust their judgment. I'm really fortunate in that my younger brother, you could say I trained him up. He started with me, wow, back in like 2000. He started with me like in 2000. And in the beginning, I had to be like a cheerleader and edge him on, you can do this, you can do this. The first time he pulled a turbo, I used to have a 6-liter Power Stroke. Yeah. And we had to pull the turbo off and get at the Y pipe behind it. It cracked right down the middle. It intimidated him. But over the years, he developed a really good skill set. Now he's a far better mechanic than I could ever say I am. He's climbing the ladder really quickly at Peterbilt. He worked for me up until about a year and a half ago, when the oil price war hit and work slowed. He got himself a good opportunity to go work for a major dealership, and he's someone that I reach out to and say, hey, what do you think? I also have a buddy that I've known since we were both kids, and same thing. He either eggs me on and say, yeah, bro, you got this, or he says, no, don't. In this particular case, the biggest risk was that I would break some bolts and I was going to make a bigger expense, but I did have the necessary tools at hand. If I was going to have to take the rest of that manifold off, I could have, but again, lots of patience, gave it a lot of time, walked away from it a couple times just to let stuff soak. I did that other doser valve, which I loaded a video on it in the meantime. I serviced other trucks, and then I'd come back to it and work it some more. I've been saying in other videos that just because you got your CDL doesn't mean you're ready to own and operate a trucking business. Having mechanical skills and being able to do jobs like this makes a big difference. I did several oil changes, several fuel filter changes. On one truck, I did change out the coolant. I put one of those pH balance strips in it, and it wasn't good. So we did that. I addressed an issue with an ABS sensor. I did the doser valve. We did quite a few. I say we, I mean it's me. But I probably saved myself. I still got more work to do. But over the course of this week, I'm probably going to save myself $4,000 to $5,000 in outside expense. By outside, I mean sending it to someone else. I got a brake I got to do still. And the crappy part is I cannot find an impact wrench or impact gun big enough to do it. I own a few, but I don't know if they walked off or where they're at. I may have sent them back to California. So I don't know if I have to farm that out, or, do I run over to Harbor Freight and just buy a cheap one? I got a jack. I got everything else. I can do the brakes. It's not again, on these trucks, guys, a lot of jobs look big, but they're not. Doing brakes on this, it's easier, in my opinion, than doing disc brakes on a car. But anyways, this is it's a 30-minute long video, kind of showing the process, what I did, what my technique was, how I went about it. The very last bolt, I did not try and get any kind of video on it, mainly because it was dark, it was late, I was tired. I probably should have called it a day earlier, but I felt like I had to get it done, and I worked late into the night. I did get it done, and I used a slightly different technique. I actually put a socket on the fastener and smacked the socket with a hammer. It's a different technique, but that kind of helps break them loose a little bit. And then I put the breaker bar on it and tapped on the hammer, tapped on the breaker bar, and kind of made it work like an impact wrench, but with just a couple taps at a time. And it eventually started to move, and then I worked it really slowly by hand. That one took the longest. That one took about 4.5 hours to get out. It wore me out. It tired me out. It took a lot out of me to get that one done. And so that's kind of why tonight I'm enjoying a cold one. I still got to put the fender on that truck. I did clear all the codes, ran it through a regen, took it for a road test. I just have that fender that goes behind the wheel to put back on. I'll get that done tomorrow. That truck still needs an oil change and a fuel filter change, but she'll be ready. She'll be ready, and we'll be out making money again. Anyways, as always, thanks for watching. I did notice a couple hours ago my Amazon account is green again, and so if I don't fall asleep and black out, guys, maybe tonight, late night, I'll try and do another load board review and show what some of the markets are. Someone asked about the Bay Area. If you're looking for box trucks, I don't see any work in the immediate Bay Area. It's out of Stockton that I see box truck market. Anyway, you'll have to excuse, this job took a few days, and I was not consistent with how I faced the camera, and that's why I'm videoing this way, because I think the majority of the video you're going to see it's oriented this way. Some of them are turned sideways, and I apologize. It's going to make the picture really, really small, but it still conveys the overall idea of what we did. And on the one hand, I think it's going to show some of you guys, hey, you can do this too, and it might show some of you other guys that I don't know as much about trucking as I think, and I need to be ready to either pay quite a bit going to the dealership, or find yourself someone local to you that you can develop a relationship with that isn't out to gouge you at every opportunity. In my particular case, I have a buddy, and I've known him since I first started driving. I was 18 years old when I first met the man, and he's been nothing but good to me. Since I'm away so much, the wife's car one day had a dead battery first thing in the morning, and I called him up and said, hey, I got this problem, and he's like, consider it done. I had my nephew go purchase a battery up the street, and the dude drove out to my house. It's probably about 30 miles from his shop, swapped it out on my wife's Tahoe. It kind of sucks because there's kind of like what you would consider a strut tower brace, but it's not a strut tower brace. It's almost like a, not even a subframe connector. It kind of holds the fenders square. Anyways, the battery's behind that. It's a pain in the butt. You got to pull some parts off to get at the battery. The man wouldn't charge me. He's like, hey man, consider this one on the house. I came out, took care of your family. They can't be without a car. And he wouldn't charge me. But at the same time, what I do with him is I pay quick. I don't make him wait on his invoices. I even offer to advance money if he needs help. And I may never be his biggest customer, but I'm his best paying customer. And that's kind of a relationship you build over time. And that's how a little guy like me, by little I mean in California, I'm not a big guy. I don't have 20 trucks there. It's usually just the truck I drive home. Or if I buy one there, I bring it to him to get it roadworthy, to bring it, you know, back out this way. But he knows when I walk through the door, money's good. I'm going to pay him. And if he needs to get paid in advance because things are slow for him, I do that. But of course, the trade-off is I do expect my trucks to come out quick. So it's a relationship. And I strongly suggest you find someone to develop that kind of relationship with. Anyways, as always, guys, thanks for watching. I apologize again for the different camera angles. It's a mess that way. I feel like it's my first video I ever made, but just over the course of the last couple days working, I lost track and I goofed on that. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy the process. It can be informative if you guys are interested in this kind of thing. All right, guys, this isn't the same truck, but the job I'm doing right now, I think some of you guys actually question, is this guy, you know, full of it, or is he really the real deal? So this is the sister truck to the one I'm working on. My leaky gasket is right here. There's 4 bolts here, there, and 2 down below that go into this manifold. The problem is the heat cycles these go through, it tends to make everything seize up. You break one of these off in there and you have to replace the entire manifold, which starts way up here. Everything you see here would have to come out. And the manifold itself is, if you can find them used, $500-600. New from the dealer is close to $1,000. And you'll probably break more things on the way through. So you'll be looking at well over $1,000 in bolts, and other gaskets and stuff you'll need to replace just to do that part back there. The crappy thing is, you know, the engine sits back into the cab some, like a lot of modern day trucks. This is where your classic style hood trucks definitely have an advantage. This turbo would be here and I'd be standing up straight doing this work. So I need to get at that, which means I need to remove pretty much from the turbo back that way to gain access. This is just for reference sake so I can show you guys what's next. Anyway, and so out, here I am in the coveralls. I'm the real deal. I don't just talk. I'm here turning wrenches, getting dirty, busting knuckles. You know, it is what it is. You want to save money. This is a big, expensive job. All right, so now we're back at the truck we're working on. I'm around here. As you can see, I removed the elbow. This is the doser valve. I removed the fuel lines, but I didn't want to dump all the coolant. These are coolant lines. That's how they cool these things. The problem with modern day trucks and all the emissions and everything they run through them, they force the exhaust to get really, really hot. And so for longevity of the components, they run coolant on top of oil through them. Turbos have always received oil. I've never seen an air-cooled turbo, but now they run coolant through them too. So taking this turbo off means you're going to dump a bunch of coolant. I didn't want to go that route. I use the long life stuff. It's expensive. And so what I did was I removed the elbow that goes from here down to there. I unscrewed my fuel lines leading up to this, which gave me some freedom to move it. You can't really see the fuel line, but I got one tucked back in there. It's in the darkness. And so the fuel lines go up here. I remove them. I soaked this in penetrating oil overnight. It came loose relatively easily. I unscrewed the band clamps. I got the elbow out. I drilled holes in the bars. See that one? See that one? And so I have dumped penetrating oil in there, and I let it sit for a while. And then with this breaker bar, that one just broke loose. It's the only reason why I stopped and said, okay, you know, calm down. Don't get excited. Let's record a video and give yourself some patience. This is where people get excited and break them. So it just broke loose. That doesn't mean it's going to come out yet. So it gave me like a quarter turn. What I did is I dropped more penetrating oil. PB Blast is what I'm using today. I dropped more in it, and then in a minute I'm going to run the drill back in so it pushes that penetrating oil further up, and then I'm going to drop more penetrating oil, work it back out, drop more penetrating oil, work it back in. It's going to take me all day to get these 4 out. That's just the way it is. If you send this to a shop, what they're going to do is they're going to put an impact wrench on this, they're going to break them, and they're going to say, we can send this to a shop and have them extract. It's going to cost you $300-400, or they'll sell you a manifold and they will get to bill you to remove everything on this side of the engine. So patience is a virtue, and yes, yours truly can turn a wrench. That's why I said in my other video, it is kind of a big job. This is the goal. I don't have to actually replace or service the EGR actuator itself. It ends way back there, almost against the firewall of the engine. If I were replacing this, I'd still have a bigger battle. This is oil activated. There's 2 oil lines on the back of this that are known for also seizing. Honestly, if these factories would spend an extra $3 when they assemble these things and put anti-seize on these engines, we wouldn't have all this expense. But again, kind of like I've been saying about Amazon, these companies aren't worried about us, guys. They look at their bottom line. And so this is a process. However, this gasket leaking provokes any one of like 5 different check engine codes, trouble codes, whatever you want to call them. And in some cases, it will not allow the truck to enter into regen mode, which will clog your filter because this isn't seeing the right flow through it. And you'll end up visiting the dealer. You'll end up visiting a dealer because you won't be able to figure out why you have a clogged particulate filter, and it has nothing to do with the filter. The rest of the system functions properly, but if these don't see the right pressure differentials between EGR and exhaust and intake, it thinks there's something else wrong, and the system will stop working. It'll give you a check engine light, it'll put you in D rate, and then it'll eventually not let you go over 5 miles an hour. These systems are complex, but once you understand what the codes are telling you and why, in this particular case, it wasn't about codes. You could hear the leak when the EGR valve would actuate. Best way to describe it is shh. Not very technical for sure, but I'll put together a couple more clicks as I make progress. Clips is what I meant to say. The bottom one, this particular one, they say you can drill it. I don't have a drill small enough to get in there. They say you can use a cutoff wheel. I don't have one at my disposal that I can get down in there. I would have to remove the turbo off of the manifold, which presents a whole nother set of don't break this, don't break that. And so I've been soaking this now. This is my 2nd day soaking it. I may just go old school and put a little heat to it. Combination of I've been soaking it and work it a quarter turn at a time. Patience is a virtue with this. Like I said, I just got this one to crack. And I was going to immediately start pushing on it again. I'm like, nope, hang on. Put some penetrating oil. And I decided to pick up the phone and kind of show you guys what I'm doing here. I know people got questions and big questions. You know, do I delete this? You know, should I delete it? I don't believe in deleting equipment because then you can't take it back to the dealer when you are over your head. They won't touch them. My younger brother works at a dealership. Anytime the ECM says there's something funky, or they can't communicate with it, or there's any sign that it's been deleted, they wash their hands because they won't be able to warrant their work, and then you're stuck. You're stuck with possibly a great truck with a great engine, but no one can make it run. And so I believe in keeping them running, guys. In fact, this doser valve is newer. They're not that expensive. You just have to take care, again, a lot of blaster in here, let it soak, and take your time pulling them out. The drawback to these components is when you do replace them, you lose your coolant. Coolant's expensive. I don't have something to retrieve my coolant with now. The yard and shop I used to rent for the trucking business, I've become the minority renter here. I just rent space now. Someone else is taking over the shop, and so I pulled my stuff out. I'm not operating here, so it doesn't make sense to have, 5 times the expense. I'm now under, I'm under $1,000 a month versus before I was a few thousand a month. But anyways, I'll add more clips as I make progress. Hopefully real soon we'll have a new gasket in place. My goal here is to not have to remove the valve completely and just pull it apart like a ½ an inch, pull that gasket out, drop the new one in, line up the holes, put the studs back in, and away she goes. All right, guys, so believe it or not, I got the one out of here out. You can see my little hole there. The odd thing is the first one that cracked loose wasn't the first one that came out. This one was more forgiving. And so the process here is you turn it till it feels like it's gonna stick. You put more PB blast here, because that's actually like a spacer, so that's getting down in the hole. You put more where the gasket is, because as it's coming loose, it'll penetrate through there, and then you put some in the little hole I created. And the idea is every time you go in, you put some PB blast. Every time you come out, you put some PB blast. It's a very slow process, guys. I mean, you get, I'm turning it there, but you get maybe, in the beginning, you get maybe a quarter turn. I'm not left-handed, so bear with me. I'm trying to show you guys kind of the process. That's about the rate that we get out of this. And there it's bottomed out. So now the process is add more PB blast and then do exactly that, but in reverse. All right, guys, so as you can see, I got 2 of them out. I'm not gonna lie, I soaked the other 2 with penetrating oil. The problem is I can't get a drill back there to drill those bosses. There's just way too much stuff in the way. I would have to remove the EGR cooler, at minimum the EGR cooler, to get a drill in there, and it would probably still have the wrong angle. So now that I got the top 2 bolts off, I soaked the whole thing in hopes that the penetrating oil makes its way down the length of the gasket and reaches the bolt. Penetrating oil kind of has a way of finding its way. And so instead of continuing and getting frustrated, I'm gonna let this sit for a couple hours. I'm gonna work on a couple other little projects and then come back at this a little later. And this is definitely one of those patience is a virtue. Because like I said, if I break one, I'm gonna quadruple, actually times 20 my parts cost, because so far in parts I am 3 gaskets into this, and I'd like to keep it that way. Otherwise, if I need to buy a new manifold, I'm well over $1,000. And so this is the point where maturity kicks in and you say, walk away. You've done good. You're halfway there. Don't get impatient. Don't try to muscle it. And so as you can see, it's pretty well soaked. I'm gonna let it sit for a bit,
And now that the top 2 bolts are off, I'm kind of hoping the penetrating oil will find its way down to the bottom 2 by just squirting the flange itself. And patience. Those 2 came out 1/8 of a turn at a time. 1/8 out, 1/8 back in, 1/8 out, 1/8 back in steps. It's taken me pretty close to 3 hours to get the 2 out. I think the last 2 are probably going to take twice that. And so I'm going to give my back a little bit of a rest because it is kind of a reach over to get there. And hopefully get back at this here in a little bit. I'm going to jump on a different project, clear the mind, and come back at it with patience again, because I quickly got frustrated with the bottom 2 because they don't appear to want to come loose. Well, guys, 3 down. I got 3 of these jokers out. The last one's the hardest to reach, the worst angle, and so I'm just penetrating it. That sounds wrong. I'm hitting it with penetrating oil, and I may have to let that one sit overnight and then come try it again tomorrow. The key here is patience. For as dumb as these bolts look, you break one and it's a ridiculous expense. But it's coming along, guys. It's coming along. Feeling pretty good about it. Well, guys, so I had to go deeper on this thing. I haven't broken anything yet. I'm trying to get my hand in there. My last bolt is right there where my finger goes. The problem is when I put it's one of those too big or too small. So to put a socket on here and get the breaker bar on it, I have to put an extension on it. Otherwise, it rubs here and the breaker bar ends up out here. So I had to put an extension on it. The problem is, you'll remember if you see that pipe over there, there was another one that ended here. Basically the one that butts up to the elbow on the back of the turbo. And I was trying to remove as little stuff as possible, but to take that apart, if you see where it is, you can't get at it from through the cab. You'd have to remove the doghouse. You can't get at it between the transmission and the frame rail. So, had to take the fender off. There you can see the pipe I took out. So I can get up there, and so I can squeeze between the tire and the frame, get that off. This way I can pull out that piece of insulated pipe. It's a flex pipe is actually what it is. Anyways, I tried pulling the breaker bar on that last bolt that's there, and I ain't gonna lie, guys, I'm pooped. I've been working these things back and forth all day long. My shoulders are sore, my arms are sore. This old guy ain't used to doing this work. I ain't gonna lie and try and say I'm a badass. Excuse my French. I may know stuff, but I don't do this for a living. I haven't worked on trucks in a long time, but things had to scale back, so I don't have mechanics anymore. Anyway, I sprayed more penetrating oil on it. I may go grab a bite to eat, let my muscles rest a little bit, because even getting that fender off was work. And yeah, we're making headway though. And if you remember what these things are supposed to look like under here, there's a lot of stuff missing here. All to get at this gasket. It's literally a $15 part, but it leaks so bad, it throws up codes and it sounds horrible. The big thing is it throws up codes and it won't fully regen. And so if I tell the driver keep running it that way, it'll eventually plug the filter so bad, even if you take it off, you won't be able to cook it in the oven. And so is life, guys. Making the video, really, in reality, the videos I've been making them because I need to take a break. And it's not just a break to rest. You need to be patient with this. I could have put an impact on that and broken all 4 of them in about 10 minutes. No doubt about that. But the idea here is to get them off. Anyways, I'll continue to put little clips together. Hopefully at the end it'll make a video that makes sense and you guys will see the progress. And my hope is that it's a successful project. My hope is to not have to continue and take everything else off from here back. That's the ultimate goal. All this stuff can stay here. And so that's making me more tired because I'm having to contort myself to reach all that. I don't want to break something and have to take the manifold off, which includes like from there out and back. Yeah. Anyways, keep chugging along, fellas. Oh, and ladies. I know I got some female viewers too. All right, guys. It got dark and late last night, so I really didn't document like putting this all back together, but I got... This was our culprit. Okay, that's where my leak was. It goes in like so, and so the secondary port, you know, further back, this is where it was leaking. Literally, if you put your fingers down in between the two ports, you could feel the exhaust coming out. And so, as compared to my previous pictures, you can see the doser valve is back on. The EGR never came off. It was a gap of maybe 1/8 of an inch, and we're talking about right there. Basically, I had a small gap in there. I was able to slide one out and put the other one in. I did not want to remove the EGR valve itself because that would include oil lines, more exhaust clamps, and just a whole lot of additional work. It was always the plan just to crack it loose and get it loose. But if you look at where the fasteners are relative to the EGR, obviously a whole bunch of stuff's in the way. You have to use a big breaker bar to get these loose. And so everything from here at the back end of the turbo, that way, was gone. And so I got it all back together late last night. It got dark, my phone was going dead, and so I didn't try and video any of that. Honestly, I just wanted to be done. I'm tired. I'm not used to I'm not used to this type of work anymore. I just got back in here and kind of started, you know, checking everything. I did make a mistake. I put this line back on and I didn't double check. This is loose. I'm double checking everything now. I may have to pull that fuel line back off to get a wrench on it. I'm not sure yet, but that's my coolant line. Clamps are back on. The flex pipe is back. It'll be a check start here in a few minutes. I got to put the fender back on because I pulled the fender off in order to get at the clamp you see up there. That had to come off so I could move that piece of pipe out of the way and get at the last bolt. But I'm close. This truck will be wrapped up and done tonight. This one hasn't been serviced yet. As you can see, my fuel filter's a year old, so that needs to be done. Fuel filters, oil filters. Need to add some coolant because we lost coolant during the process. But this was, for me, for my capabilities, this was a bigger job. And it's not so much how much work it was more the risk of making it potentially a much larger job. After everything's together, I'm probably gonna have to fire up the laptop and do some code clearing. An issue like this where your exhaust pressures aren't correct will throw up several codes. Probably gonna have to do a parked regen to make sure it's all cleaned out. But once that gets done, a good bath, engine bay, truck, the whole bit, lube the chassis, and she should be wrapped up. She should be wrapped up. I do feel some soreness in the forearms, a little bit in my back, because if you look at where that is, guys, if you look at the bolts that I got to get at, and we come around the side of the truck, it's behind the firewall. And so you stand over here and kind of lean over and contort around these hoses. Again, I didn't want to take the hoses off because that just creates more work and more cost because I'd have to replace more coolant. But, you know, it's a sizable job, but if you have decent mechanic skills and patience, you can do a job like this. The part of the ECM, you know, probably not, but honestly, those codes will self-correct and go inactive with time. I like to clear them as soon as I can and run a regen, so when the truck hits the road, everything's ready to go, and the driver doesn't get, you know, 30 miles up the road and the truck's asking for a regen. Anyways, I hope I can piece together all these different bits and snips and make it into a decent video. Alright guys, so we're back with the truck that I did all the work on the EGR side with. As you can see, I don't have any active faults. It did have an army of them. I just cleared them. They were inactive. Well, most of them were inactive. They were older. I had a coolant low level, which that came up because I lost coolant. I had a EGR flow rate below threshold. I had a EGR circuit something or another. I cleared those, and so now what I want to do is it's up to temperature. What I'm going to do next is monitor what its EGR flow is and maybe initiate a regeneration. This truck was struggling with that. It was asking for them constantly. So I'm going to check its soot level and then put it through a regen. That's really the best way to double check and make sure everything has seated properly and I don't have a fuel leak or a coolant leak. When you run these things through a regen cycle, it puts heat to the engine. A life hack, you know, if you have a suspected leak, let's say a radiator leak, but it's a pinhole and it really only manifests itself when you're under load, if you have the ability to start the truck on a regen, that'll build temperature and build pressure, and it'll give you the ability to what am I trying to say? If you don't have like one of those pressure testers that you can just put on a cap and pressurize the system and find the leak, if you put one of these things into regen mode, it'll definitely put some heat to the system and you'll find it. But this is the truck I've worked on for the last couple days. I got all the bolts out, got the new gasket in place, buttoned everything back up today. I don't think I have anything that's leaking at this point, and so I cleared the codes. That will allow us to go into regen. I want to just take a look and see what she's got cooking for the moment. Yeah, see, she's at 43% soot level. The differential pressure is at 0.12. What else is she telling us? The after treatment injector is inactive, so that means it hasn't fired it up. I can't really tell you if that's a good thing or a bad thing yet. The fuel pressure is only at 2.6% or 2.6 psi, but that could be just because the system hasn't tried to send it may not have tried to activate it yet, and so we're going to go ahead and activate it, see what it does. As you can see, the temperatures are all low. We're going to try and fire her up, see if she goes for it. Again, it's you know, these are the criteria that needs to be set. So the parking brake must be applied. We have that. The engine must be running, obviously. Accelerator pedal must be released. Battery voltage must be greater than 10 volts. Soot ratio must be less than 200%. It's currently at 43. It's showing us there. So as soon as I click on transmission must be in neutral, she should fire up and start putting some heat to her. There you can see The message center says regen in process. It still hasn't built fuel pressure, and it still says we're inactive. And so I'm gonna stop the video, jump out, take a look, make sure I'm not leaking fuel, and that's the cause of it. All right, guys. So she just started dosing. That familiar sound that they make, it just quit because it hit a temperature threshold. But that's kind of how it works. It goes from 7 to 0. As you can see, my fuel pressure is now up to matching the engine fuel pressure, and temperatures are climbing. You can see on both of these, you can see the my diesel exhaust temperature, which is basically engine exhaust temperature, is just under 600. That's what most people would call your pyro temp. Then the DPF inlet temperature is at 711, so that's climbing and en route to where we want it to be. Here we got still at 43%, but you can see the delta pressure is now higher. That's kind of indicative of it's doing its thing. It's going to that's our boost level, but everything's in the green, and it's a little unnerving because I see kind of smoke coming off that side of the engine, but it's basically all of the penetrating oil burning off because obviously everything is getting hot. So I'm gonna let this go. It may take up to an hour. If nothing probative comes up, I'm gonna say this was a success. Got the codes all cleared. As you can see, she's in the middle of doing her thing. The light over there to the right is just warning that the exhaust gas is hot. But she's doing her thing. I'll probably take her for a road test, and yeah, this is going to tell me my laptop is running low on charge. I don't have a way to charge it in this truck. The truck next door has an inverter. Technically, I don't need to keep the laptop connected the whole time, but we'll see what we do here. As always, guys, thanks for watching.